Welcome to the Above and Beyond Recovery Podcast, where we explore recovery and its relationship to faith, family, work, community, and health.
Hi there, my name is Amber, and I am one of the hosts of the Above and Beyond Recovery Podcast. We're so happy that you joined us. We're here to tell you a little bit about ourselves and what you can expect from the episode. So again, I'm Amber Didden.
I'm Shawn Ryan.
I'm Bryan Koch.
So why are we here, guys?
Yeah, well, first of all, we thank you for joining us. And we, as Amber said, we just want to talk a little bit and have you get to know us a little bit and really what Above and Beyond Recovery really is. We're going to, over the coming future episodes, we're going to explore and try to find wholeness in the midst of what can sometimes feel very hopeless in addiction. And what we're going to be doing is we'll be bringing some guests and people that are trained very well in addiction to talk to us about the relationship between addiction and faith and family, work and community, and then obviously personal health. So we look forward to you joining us. And today we just want to talk a little bit about who we are and how our lives are connected to recovery and addiction.
That's right. So I guess the first thing I wanted to start with is how were you first introduced to the concept of addiction recovery? And I'll start with you, Shawn.
Okay. Well, I would say I'm in recovery, which I think is a neat dynamic for our group here. I think I'm the only one actually in recovery, but everybody has some type of interaction with recovery some way or not. And it's interesting because when I was in my addiction early on, I didn't know what recovery was. There wasn't like this billboard out there or this sign saying, okay, here's recovery, here's what it looks like, and here's how you get it. But once I found it and I understood what it was and how you can do it, I mean, it's radically changed my life forever. And I've been in recovery now for about 11 years. So, yeah.
I guess a question I have for you is when you first started becoming addicted to substances, were there people in your sphere at all that had tried to become sober or tried to find recovery? Like, when did you first start realizing that there might be something like maybe on the other side of addiction or beyond addiction, or how did that like materialize for you?
I mean, I think early on, you're not really thinking about recovery, you're just thinking about the addiction and it's kind of like taking you over, and it's causing you to change the person that you are, the way you act, the way you see things. And birds of a feather flock together. So we're all there and our focus isn't in the beginning anyway, let's get better, because you don't even realize that you're that far gone until you're that far gone. And then over time though, as you progress through addiction and you start getting introduced to different types of people and your family starts to become aware and things start getting a little worse, you start hearing this word recovery, or programs or the type of help that can help you get out of what you're in. And then eventually once you start realizing that there's something outside of addiction and that there's actually like some way to get out of that, because eventually you want to get out of it. In the beginning it's neat and it's exciting. I mean, to be honest, you enjoy it in some ways, but eventually it gets so out of hand that it becomes almost like hopeless. You feel like you're stuck, and then that word recovery starts to kind of take its place in your life.
Interesting.
So.
How about you, Bryan?
Well, for me, I think one of the things I've heard about addiction is that it doesn't discriminate. It affects all of us, in some way. And I know that there's different levels of addiction. And I would have always said, well, I never battled addiction, but I obviously did. Before I knew Christ, there were times I experimented with things, and that was a level of addiction. But fortunately, and we'll talk about faith a lot in this program, that had a big impact on my life and kind of helped me get to a different place. But for me, probably now also I've been in ministry over 30 years. So as you pastor, you are involved in the community and with many families. And I've had many, many talks about addiction. And I'll just say this, and I think it's important for our listeners to know this. I'm not even close to being an expert on addiction. And so I think when you try to deal with things like you are, that's a big problem. And that'll be one of the things that we try to do in this podcast is find understanding of what addiction is about. So certainly I felt a lot of growth in that as a pastor. I've been a part of Pennsylvania Adult and Teen Challenge for many years on the board and serving, so I always had a heart for it. And then at some point, maybe in one of the episodes, I'll tell my story because my family, my boys, certainly my wife, were greatly affected by addiction because we were hit head on by a drunk driver, and she lost her life, and I lost my left leg. So that was another whole, dimension of addiction's interaction with me. But I can tell you this, in a good way, like there is wholeness to be found. Whether you're the one battling it or it's a family member that you love that's battling it, wholeness is very much a possibility.
How about in your experience as a pastor, how often did people come into your office struggling with some kind of addiction?
Well, my recollection of that would be in the 30 plus years was that a lot of times it doesn't happen right away. And I think one of the reasons is because of shame. I think shame really drives people away from saying, well, I don't want people to really know this. We're trying to deal with it, or we're getting a handle on it. And I think maybe if you're listening today, you may know someone that is battling addiction. I would just encourage you, don't be ashamed of it. One of the things that we're going to try to do in this podcast is let you know that you're not alone. You're not the only one battling this. There are so many, and as we are hearing almost on a daily basis, there's a rise in addiction. So I was really grateful when people would come, and then we could, if they needed residential help, we could get them into a ministry and organization like Pennsylvania Adult and Teen Challenge, or if they just needed to talk with someone, if they just needed to have a conversation, maybe about their child or their spouse. But I find it's great when you can just get to that point, and most of like acceptance that, hey, this is a real thing in our life and we need to get some help. And so that was always encouraging when that would take place.
That's good. Amber, I would say, I think it's important that you tell people, how you were introduced to recovery, because you have a perspective that a lot of us don't.
Yeah. So I grew up in a faith-based Christian home and was really fortunate to not ever really be introduced to drugs or alcohol at all. When people ask me well, what was high school like? I'm like, nobody offered, which is great. I was like, all right, I just kind of made it through without that. This is awesome. And then I went to Bible college and I met my would-be husband. And he was a graduate of Pennsylvania Adult and Teen Challenge, was in recovery. And that's really where I was first introduced to the concept of recovery or sobriety and of course I had heard those terms before, but I'd never really met someone or known someone that was in that kind of space. And so I started learning more about Teen Challenge and learning more about what it means to be in recovery. And we got married, had been married for a couple of years, and I was working here at Teen Challenge part-time, and my husband suffered a relapse. And man, the only thing I had really been exposed to in recovery was almost this idea of you are in addiction, you get help, you're sober, and then especially sometimes in Teen Challenge, I hate to say this, but there's this idea that you're good and you're always good. You will never relapse. You are, rescued from it, which I think is true in a lot of cases, but sometimes people struggle. And that's okay. That's a part of the recovery process. So I was coming from that perspective of my husband is a graduate. He's never going to relapse again. That is in his ancient history and I don't really have to worry about it, And then was hit by this reality. And so obviously it was a really difficult time, but I was working at Teen Challenge and was surrounded by these people that had the expertise and the understanding and the experience and were able to walk me through that.
And if I could just ask, how important, what you just said right there, how important was that to you?
Having that support, it was everything. Yeah, I don't know what I would have done. I would have been completely lost. And I think that's why I'm so excited to do this show, is because I know there are a lot of people who either are very new to this idea, have a loved one that just started struggling or just entered recovery, or they themselves are new to this process, or there's someone at their job or someone at their church or someone, a friend of a friend that just never has been exposed to these ideas before. And I wish that I had had a podcast to listen to that was here's, addiction and recovery 101.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And I think catching it early, for me, if people would have talked about being sober or recovery, if I had people in my corner saying, you need to find recovery, you need to get sober, maybe that first year, I might have not went, 18 years, close to 20 years of being in addiction, where it could have nipped it in the bud a lot sooner, which I think that's why I value what we're doing here too, people can gather information, good information from not just us, but from the people that we're going to have on the show, and come up with a plan to try to help the person that they love or the person that's caught in addiction, so we can get it before it gets too out of hand.
Yeah, and that whole idea of recovery being holistic, like it's not just that you aren't using drugs anymore or your loved one isn't drinking anymore. It's your relationship with God, your relationship with your family, how you're doing in the workforce. Are you making friendships and being a valuable member of your community? How are you feeling physically and mentally, your mental health? All of those components can be part of recovery, which is why we kind of went with that Above and Beyond name, because it's above and beyond just what you think of when you think of sobriety. It's more than that.
When I hear your guys' perspective, obviously as a pastor, in a community, one of the things I'm really looking forward to in this podcast for myself and our listeners is understanding. It really does surprise me at times when I talk to people in the community, business leaders, and certainly in the church. And I've heard it said to me when I talk to them about it, they'll say, well, addiction really isn't a problem in our life or our church or our community. And I just want to call a time out there and say, no, that's really not the case, because addiction is everywhere. But I think understanding, because I know I've personally appreciated, I've been on the PATC team now for over a year, and I've learned so much about addiction that as a pastor, I really didn't understand. And I would always refer and try to get people and families the help that they needed. But I really hope that as we bring guests into this podcast and you listen, that you're going to learn. You're going to learn things that will be helpful. You're going to learn you're not alone. You're going to learn that there is wholeness and there's opportunity for healing. So I'm really looking forward to our communities and leaders learning about addiction, because it's very much a part of our culture. And so I think that will help us greatly.
Is there anything in particular that you are excited about going on, like a deep dive? Like, I would love to learn more about this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Pennsylvania Adult and Teen Challenge is a faith-based, but also very clinical. And we're going to talk about some of the help you can get in an organization like ours, the medical, the detox, the clinical, but then certainly the faith and how addiction, what does the Bible say about addiction? And so we're looking forward to having those conversations. And so that would be one of the topics I'm really excited about.
I was just reading the story about Noah after the flood, and he grew a vineyard, and then all kinds of nonsense happened. And I really want to know about that.
Right.
Was that the first time we heard about addiction in the Bible? I don't know.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And and addiction really is through the church. I know we often think drugs, alcohol, but the addictive behaviors, the way the Bible says we're fearfully and wonderfully made. And a part of that creation is our minds and the way we think. And so we'll bring guests on that can really talk about the mind and addiction and how we, as fallen people, we're not perfect, and we all have addictive behaviors. In that sense, I guess we're all in recovery because we need to. And I really love what the two of you have said. It's a process. It's a journey. It's not, I think one of the great things I've learned being a part of this ministry is that it's not step 1, step 2, step 3, you're good. It's individualized, because people are people. They broke the mold after they made us, I guess. And I think it's the individualization of how we can get people the help they need. So it was really neat to hear you guys say that.
Yeah, it is a process, but I would say it's like a lifestyle. When you're in recovery, it becomes a lifestyle for you. It's kind of like an athlete. If you're an athlete, you have a certain lifestyle you live. So when you're in recovery, you have a certain lifestyle you live, and you set up these guidelines and these parameters for yourself. And to find out how to do that, it's like very empowering. That there's people who do it now, and they can come show you how to do it. And it really takes, they say it takes a village to raise somebody. Well, it takes a village to help somebody through recovery. Like you said, people send people to us and they say, well, they're going to Pennsylvania Adult Teen Challenge. They love the Lord. They're perfect. My loved one's going to go there in a year. They're going to come out and it's over. But that's not always how it works. And it takes the professionals, obviously, right? And we know what we're doing, and we're going to give these things, but it takes family members, and the church, the local church, and everybody working together on the same page, building this lifestyle of recovery for that person. So.
Yeah, and I love, the mission of Pennsylvania Adult and Teen Challenge. It's not just sobriety. That is a major piece, obviously, but it's wholeness. And, Amber, maybe you could reflect on that as what you see. Obviously, it relates to some of the topics we'll talk about, but what helps create that wholeness in the people that we're, both men and women, that we're trying to get the help that they need?
Yeah, I think it ties into what Shawn was saying just about the whole community, that idea of like it takes a village to raise a child or to help somebody into a lifestyle of recovery. And I, like you said, that's what I appreciate about PATC, but it's also what I appreciate about what we're trying to do in the show, which is show people that it's more than just one element. It's more than just um, the physical health component or the clinical piece.
Right.
You are an entire being with a spirit and a body and a soul, and you need nourishment in all of those areas. And I think the community piece is really important too. Like, how can churches help? How can hospitals help? What can our communities do to better support people who are trying to find recovery?
Well, and I loved what you said, that when you were going through that season of that, the support meant so much to you. And I often say, as an amputee, and I use a cane, we all lean on something. We really think about it. And so I think, other people, and certainly God, and certainly people that can bring help and understanding to us about addiction is really important to help us, take that path to recovery where we need to take it.
Who are you guys hoping finds the show?
I honestly hope that that young people find the show. I didn't actually start using till I was probably 19, but that's still pretty young. And if I wish that I would have known what I know now, then
Don't we all?
yeah, I mean, you always hear your parents say that, right? Or some older person like, if I only knew what I knew that, right? You're like, yeah, whatever. But it's true.
That would be a whole episode.
It's true, but I hope young people find it, and they hear a story, whether it be mine or whether it be yours or the people we have on, and they grasp this concept of recovery, that there's hope, and how bad life can turn if they stay on that path, right? Because the next generation is young people. I have young children. I have a 24-year-old son, a 22-year-old son. I have a 14, 13, 12. So I mean, we have my quiver's full.
Right.
And there's a lot of young people out there that are going to be this next upcoming generation, and I don't want them to fall into the same traps that I fell into.
Amber, what about you? Who do you hope hears this?
Obviously, family members. I hope that people who are family members of people in recovery or in addiction find what we're doing here, and that we are helpful to them. I really want us to be a resource and a guide to people that don't really know where else to turn for advice.
Yeah, I think for me, those are great topics, and I was thinking as we were talking about it, but I'm thinking of community. I'm thinking of, you think of how addiction affects business and it affects schools. I know when I pastored, there were school districts that were really battling, problems with addiction, and young students that were battling heroin or fentanyl or those things. And so I'm hoping that this will serve in a lot of ways to help bring understanding to our community and leaders, and from their perspective can be guests that will give a lot of insight, because we all can make a difference. When we talk about wholeness, thank God for organizations like this, but really in your community, in your family, you really can make a difference as well. So I'm looking forward to leaders being a part of it and growing in their understanding of it.
And also, I'll add one more. I hope people that don't have any experience with addiction find us, because I know one thing that I've learned is that, and like you were saying, everybody's in recovery from something,
Right.
but there are so many concepts that go along with the recovery journey that can apply in so many areas of life. And I also think that a lot of people might listen to this thinking like, I don't know anybody in addiction or recovery, and then start thinking like, actually,
I do.
I do.
Yeah.
Or you might encounter somebody at some
Right.
point and have
Yeah.
some tools to know how to help.
Yeah, my wife, and she's with Christ now, obviously, but my boys and I, we talk about it like our stories were completely different. I grew up without Christ. God miraculously delivered her from M&Ms and Kool-Aid at a very early age. It was just amazing how he broke that. But so if you are listening, again, I doubt that there would be hardly anyone that would ever tune in that doesn't know someone who's battling addiction. And I think it will be helpful to understand that.
So real quick, why don't you tell everybody what you do here at Pennsylvania Adult Teen Challenge.
Well, I'm the vice president of marketing.
Okay.
What do you do here?
I'm the vice president of business development. And Bryan, what do you do here?
I'm the vice president of development, which involves spiritual formation teams as well as advancement. And so, just to give a shout out to all of our donors again that are a part of bringing wholeness to those who find themselves caught in the battle of addiction. They're giving, they're praying, their support, they're being a part of it. So we're really grateful for that.
Yeah, and Amber didn't tell you that she's the brains behind this operation here.
They'll hear in the show notes. I'll totally cite myself on that.
There you go.
Edited by, produced by.
Yeah, no, she did a lot of work to get this thing together. So thank you, Amber.
That's right. And Shawn and I have no expertise in that, but
No.
They sat very patiently while we set everything up.
That's right. Well, we worked through some challenges. That's right.
That's right. But how exciting for episode 1.
Yeah.
Maybe, Amber, as you would kind of wrap us up, where do you see us going here in the future episodes and some of the topics we might be covering?
So, as the brains behind the operation, I have created a master spreadsheet of every episode topic that we're planning on discussing. And we do have some really awesome guests lined up. Some of the topics that I'm really looking forward to are relapse prevention. We are going to do like an addiction in the Bible episode, so hopefully I get my Noah questions answered.
There you go.
And also one that's really good is relapse. Did I say relapse prevention?
Yes, you did.
I did say that.
Yeah.
Sorry. So yeah, those are some ones that I think are going to be great. We're going to do an episode or two about women's issues in addiction because I know that's very different. A lot of women have more challenges when it comes to childcare and what to do with their children while they're in treatment. So we'll talk about some of that. How about you guys? Any
I would say, there's a couple. I think the have talking about MAT. I think
What is MAT?
medically assisted treatment.
I was going to say, because I'm new at TC, and so some of the acrostics, we're going to call a timeout, and we're going to say, what is MAT? What's AMA? What is DDAP?
Right,
That's
yeah. We're going to give you a lot of those little things, and you're going to be
Right.
very confused, but we'll do our best to try to explain what they are. And I think that's such a controversial topic, especially in the faith world, right? In the world of Christianity, you hear these terms, and people are like, and I think it's important to get some understanding of where they fit and how they should be used. We don't want to replace Christ. We know he's the epicenter of everything, but we want to use the tools that we can for certain people to try to make sure that we provide the right treatment for the right people to get them to the same place that we would get somebody else who doesn't use them. That one, and I'm excited for the alumni, spotlights or the testimonial videos, because there's nothing more powerful than hearing somebody's story, what they went through, where they came through, because that person
Such
can,
a big part.
that person can relate to someone much better than I may be able to, or you be able to, and it just touches so many more people. And it's always just good for me to hear that, because some days, you're tired and you're worn out. You just need to hear that story, and it just revives your faith, and it just brings you back to a point where you're like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, and I would just say to our listeners, just based on what Shawn just said, like we all have a life story. One of the things I share often as I'm out ministering in churches or businesses, universities, is we're not just, we're just not numbers. Every number has a name, every name has a story, and every story matters to God. And so I think that is an important piece when we hear stories of people that are on that journey to wholeness, that have, maybe where their life was, a man or woman, 2 or 3 years ago, they're in a different place. And so that is really exciting to hear. And we're obviously going to talk about, what does the Bible say about addiction? What's the history of addiction? It's not a new thing. Addiction has been around. It's, so it'll be interesting to take a deeper dive into some of those discussions. And again, to me, I guess one of my leadership signatures is a learner. And I just enjoy learning. And this is certainly something, whether it's family or parenting, it's going to be exciting to learn some of those things as we cover those topics.
Yeah.
There's a question for you, really. If someone was watching right now and they were like, listen, I want to get in recovery right now. I'm already excited about it. What would they do?
They can call us at Pennsylvania Adult Teen Challenge at 844-888-8085. That number is also in our show notes if anybody needs help.
Right. And they can go to our website too.
Go to our website, paatc.org.
Yeah, and I would also say, and again, it's exciting, the outpatient opportunities that Lebanon County, Lancaster County, and a lot of our spots, and Shawn would know even better, like the Naaman Center, just if you want to have a conversation, again, maybe you're personally not battling it, but you know someone, maybe you've got a son or daughter or spouse, someone that would just like to get some insight, we certainly have the Naaman Center. So maybe again, explaining. Tell
Yeah.
us what the Naaman Center is.
Well,
Shawn.
that's a great, I think, show topic. I don't know if we put that down, but what are levels of care, right? You know, most people have no idea what you're talking about when you start explaining these levels of
Right.
care. So we'll explain the Naaman Center. Naaman Center is an outpatient level of care. So, you know, there are people who have children and they're working and they're battling with addiction, but they can't just stop. I mean, what are they going to do with their kids? Who's going to watch their kids? How are they going to pay for everything? So the Naaman Center offers this kind of time where you can come to one of our centers. We can counsel you through some things. We can work through your addiction. We build treatment plans. We can provide MAT services if needed so that you can continue on with your life, but at the same time, receive a certain amount of treatment every week, right? So you can still take care of your kids because they're in school or you got to go to a job, you got to pay the rent. So we offer that service as well, which is great for, you know, I'm a teen challenge lifer. You know, when I graduated, we didn't have any of this. So it's neat to see all these different levels of care. And I really think we should make that one of our topics and we can discuss
Yeah,
these
for
levels
sure.
of care so that when people are trying to call in and they're hearing all this stuff, they know, you know, what we're talking about.
So one of the things we want to do on our show is we want to close with a wholeness habit. So something that we're doing in our everyday life that we're trying to make a habit so that we have wholeness in our life in those areas of faith, family, work, community, and health. So what is your wholeness habit this week?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, even just hearing you guys talk earlier, especially Shawn said it's a lifestyle. You know, how many times when pastoring a church, you know, you're going to make a New Year's resolution and I'm going to read through the Bible and you hit February and you get to 2nd Chronicles and it's just over.
Yeah.
You know, you've read the Bible 18 times,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
2nd Chronicles. You know?
Yeah.
So I really think about lifestyle as it relates as an amputee, and, you know, being less active. I was a racquetball player and, as Shawn said, an athlete for most of my life. So what I'm eating, always being aware of that, you know, reading the labels and saying, I don't know. Reading and growth, because again, we are physical, we're spiritual, we're emotional. Mental health is a big part of it. 2 things, I'm reading a lot right now. In the Bible, I'm reading about the life of David, which I love that. The Old Testament narratives, which are powerful. I'm reading a book right now called How We Love. It's on relationships. And again, addiction affects all those relationships, whatever it would be. And so that's been good. And one of the practices that I work on, and I wasn't always this way. I tend to be a type A. I don't stop and smell the roses. I want to plant more roses. So solitude has become a big deal for me. And I'll just sit out on my back deck and just have some solitude, just quiet. No iPhone, no iPad, no email, no TikTok, no Facebook, just me and just the birds chirping and the clouds moving. And I find that very powerful.
It's obvious that Bryan has no kids at his house.
I'm enjoying that season. I love on the grandkids.
Yeah.
I shoot a little whipped cream in their mouth before they go. That's a tradition. And I say, see you guys later. Then I have solitude.
Solitude.
It's a beautiful season of life, Shawn.
That's great.
But you have to
As
part
you
your
were
hair
saying-
like I do, mostly.
As
to-
you're saying that, I heard my kids in the background running around fighting and yelling like, okay, I can't wait for
It's
that
a great
part.
season of life. That's right.
Yeah.
I felt like I was in a meditation, like a guided meditation. After you were done talking, I was like, I feel so relaxed just thinking about it.
Yeah, I was there for about
Lower
3
your
seconds.
shoulders and take a deep breath,
Yeah, and
yes.
then a basketball went flying by my head and it broke my window or something. So
I remember those days.
Yeah. So,
What's your wholeness habit, Shawn?
ooh, so and we're doing this weekly.
Sure.
Okay, which is good because this one might last about a week. We'll see.
okay.
Because I am trying to do some physical exercise. So I
Nice.
got the treadmill. It's literally in my bedroom, so I can go from the bed to the treadmill, trying to make that an easy transition.
You don't have laundry hanging on it or anything. It's not like
Okay, this morning there was a towel hanging on it, right? But just one piece of, one towel. So I tried.
honesty is where it starts.
That's we're in recovery now, lifestyle
right,
here,
that's
lifestyle.
right, there we go.
Working through these things. So I'm trying to walk, about 15 minutes in the morning. I try to pace myself, and then I try to do a little incline to get some extra work. I take my little dumbbells, and while I'm walking, I try to do some curls and that. I have some bands I set up in the bedroom as well, right there.
Wow.
I have some mats in the bedroom that I can do things.
Do you have the?
wakes up and is like,
You
what
still
is
have
happening?
you still have the bed in your bedroom?
I do. I do.
Okay, just to
Actually,
check.
my wife is actually she's doing it with me,
Oh,
so
wow.
it's kind of like we're doing it together. Now, next week this could totally change, but for now,
Like when you're stretched out in the bed, can you just pull the band like that, like right when you wake up?
it's not that it's not that close. That's a great idea, though.
This is the help you're going to get.
Yeah,
if you tune in.
right. Yeah, mount the band over
There
where you
you
sleep.
go.
You can do.
That's right.
So that and one thing though that lifestyle-wise though, which would never change next week or the following week is, and you have your solitude. I do have my solitude early in the morning. I will say that I get up before everybody wakes up, and I spend time with God. I open up my Bible, I have my devotionals, and I just spend some time with God in quiet.
Yeah.
I read, I learn. It has become one of my. It's the most important thing I do in my
You
day.
miss it if it doesn't happen.
That's right, and it affects me if I don't. I mean, if I don't do it, like I can tell during the day that I didn't do it, like, and I have to stop what I'm doing and do it. But that's part of the lifestyle change, and that's something. One of those guidelines I built in my life a long time ago, and
You're
I
not
said,
just checking the box. It
no,
means something.
it
to
means
you.
something to me, yeah, and it has changed my life drastically.
Yeah.
So that's my consistent one for this week. Though my second one is the physical exercise.
So bands in the Bible. What about
Bands
you?
in the Bible. Hey, Amber.
So mine is this book. I brought it in because it's very pretty. It's by Kelly Fabian. It's called Sacred Questions. And I like it because it prompts you with some really deep questions about spirituality and faith. So she starts with a passage from the Bible and then gives you some really deep prompts that are different from like, how can you apply this in your life? You know,
Right.
it's really stuff to chew on. And so that's been my habit. And yeah, I have gotten into the habit of starting my day with it. And I do miss it when I don't.
That's good.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Not that I'll give a mini sermon every episode, but think of how much of Jesus' ministry was affected by questions and interruptions. It wasn't always a script and a plan and a sermon, but it was just when the questions were brought to him, or an interruption, or and it was a great moment of teaching. So that's powerful.
Yeah, that's good. So here's a quick question.
Yeah.
Now that we're doing this, and people might be watching, a lot of technically challenged people, are going to be trying to get involved and see what's going on. How do they find the show? Like, how would I find the show right now?
We are going to make this as easy as possible, which means that we're probably going to annoy our audience with how many places they're going to find us. But we will be posting each video episode on YouTube, so you can follow us on YouTube. We will also be posting it wherever you get your podcasts. So if that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify, it'll be on there. In the show notes of this episode or the comment section, I will post links to where you can find us. So you can listen to us on audio, on your commute, on your way to work, or you can watch us on video if you so choose.
Nice.
And I would say this to our listeners, the Bible says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. So if this has been a help to you, or future episodes are a help, then share it with friends, share it with some of your family. And that's a great way to love others.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll say too is that if you have any questions, or if you're like, I would love to learn more about this in a future episode, please email us at AboveBeyond@paatc.org. So that's AboveBeyond@paatc.org. You can leave a comment in the comments as well with your questions. We would love to help answer them.
And we've had multiple closings today, just like the Apostle Paul when he wrote Philippians.
Or a traditional AG pastor.
That's right. That's right. But Amber, why don't you just close us out and with whatever you want to say? But I'll just say thanks for listening today, and we look forward to being with you in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. We're excited for this journey and can't wait to bring you along with us.
Wow! Bam. Yeah, that was shorter than the
Let's
pregame.
try that again, please.
That was shorter than the
Hey.
pregame.
Yeah, right.
That was
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. The Above and Beyond Recovery podcast is a production of Pennsylvania Adult and Teen Challenge. If you or a loved one needs help with addiction, call us now at 844-888-8085 or find us online at paatc.org. That information is also in our show notes. Join us next time as we continue the conversation.